and welcome back to Gamer Muscle videos. Now recently of course the Steam VR beta was released, which featured reprojection as well as a whole host of other updates. But on top of that, the guys over at VIVE that make injector drivers allowing you to play Oculus Rift games on the HTC Vive have just released an update that takes advantage of the Steam VR beta reprojection features. Not only that, but the developer has said specifically that the new VIVE injector drivers get a massive performance boost with Dirt Rally. So of course, we've had to load up Dirt Rally and give it a bit of a test. Now we are running on a Nvidia GTX 1070 graphics card and an i7 6700K, and of course the Steam VR beta reprojection features don't yet work on AMD cards, though they should do soon. With that in mind though, I have to say these new injection drivers and the ability to use reprojection finally with the HTC Vive makes Dirt Rally even better than it was previously, and it was pretty damn good. The biggest thing being that you can now pretty much pump all the graphics on full whilst also running at 1.5 render to target. So in short, you basically end up with no AA, maximum graphics settings, and you do sometimes get game slowdown, but that slowdown doesn't ever translate into head tracking or the weird stutter that you'd sometimes get when you drop below 90 in the previous versions of Steam and Revive with Dirt Rally. And this is really the power of asynchronous reprojection and asynchronous time warp, in that a lot of the high quality VR games aren't actually VR games but are just games that existed previously that happen to also work well in VR, so flight simulators and driving simulators especially. And because those games when they were developed weren't developed around VR, they do have moments in them where there's big frame rate spikes and frame rate drops. And unless you do have something like asynchronous time warp, they can be a little bit uncomfortable to play unless you put the graphics down to accommodate for that occasional time there's frame rate drops, or you happen to have an absolute beast of a computer. But now, as I say, that's all a thing of the past and everything runs really well. From our testing, what I would recommend though is that you try and set it so that you're not always leaning on the asynchronous time warp, and that it's something that just happens to smooth out those occasions where, say you come around a corner and there's a giant crowd that just happen to be on one or two corners of a track, or those times when you would get a little bit of stutter. Because I have noticed that if you're really leaning on it and say, you know, dropping 20-30 frames from the 90, then you do start to notice the game slowing down. Even though the head tracking's fine and it's comfortable from a VR and a sort of VR sickness perspective, it fixes that. From a gameplay perspective, if you have the game slowing down, it can make your sort of perception of the vehicle speed and how the vehicle's going to move, it can make that a lot harder. So really, depending on the spec of your system, what you should probably do is knock the settings down to a point where you pretty much always have 90 FPS, but for those rare occasions where you would get spikes, you know, you're only dropping 10-15 FPS max. I'm sure some people will be totally comfortable just on a 970 or even a 960 pumping the graphics up and putting up with a slightly slower game, or even just using the old reprojection. I'm sure some people will be able to put up with that. But for me, as someone that likes driving simulators, and I do enjoy trying to go faster and trying to be precise with the vehicle, I definitely think tweaking it to get it so it's almost always at 90 is the right way to go about this. But really, it just looks so good having Dirt Rally, as I say, with the super sampling at 1.5 and then all the settings on full. Apart from, I think the settings I turned down to get the optimal thing for my 1070 and the i7 was I did turn the shadows down one notch, and really interestingly, if you are tweaking the graphics settings and you're changing the tree details, I think it's a case of either having the trees on the ultra setting or on the very low setting, because if you put them on any of the settings in between, you can notice very clearly in VR the trees updating their graphics, which is something I have to say I haven't noticed in reality. When walking through the park, the trees didn't seem to update as you went along, and in a rally car it's really distracting having the trees update their quality. So you're better off, as I say, going for ultra with the trees and compromising somewhere else, or just turn the trees down. Other than that, I mean, the previous setting that used to have a big effect was it was the sort of fauna, like the grass settings and the rock settings in terms of the amount of objects that are on the screen. The latest drivers seem to allow you to increase them without as much of a performance impact that they used to have, but those are the other settings that I definitely look at. If you're, as I say, on a slower system, definitely look at turning the grass detail down and the amount of objects on the screen down, as well as turning the crowds off, and then you should be all hunky-dory. And finally, with the new Revive injectors, you don't need to move around your EXE into the other EXE to get it to run. You just copy the new Revive files, which I'll put in the video description, into the Dirt Rally folder, and you can now, as long as you disable launching into big picture mode, you can now just launch Dirt Rally through Steam and it loads into VR absolutely perfectly. No fiddling, just totally seamless. So we should all give a big hug, wet sloppy kisses and a pat on the back to the guy at Revive who's done all the Revive drivers. He's done an incredible job of allowing those of us with the, let's face it, superior VR headset that is the HTC Vive to play games that for some reason don't have OpenVR support yet. And of course a tiny tap on the back for Valve for now having asynchronous reprojection with OpenVR, because as I say, for those of us that like Sims and flight sims and older games that we play in VR as well, it really does transform things. And also for those of you with potato PCs, you can now enjoy virtual reality with your computer, which is always a positive thing, I'd say. So really that pretty much covers the update to the Revive and Steam VR with Dirt Rally. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and check out our previous video that we released yesterday. Until the next video, thanks for watching and goodbye.